hope this is the last program here. But I can assure you, yes, this will be the last program, and that's one of the reason we did a lot of event in the month of Feb, 2, 3 seminars and 2 talks, because we are moved to the new building. You all aware, I all welcome you. Please come and have a nice cup of coffee with us and good tea, good hot chocolate. A lot of good things are there. Our office is fully functional. Classrooms are fully functional. The auditorium is in the final stages. It's all automated sound systems, and the guys are controlling everything with iPad. So it highly high tech. I must honestly confess to you people that my people are used to the 2,000 square foot. Now we moved to 20,000 square foot. They're getting lost there actually, honestly. So my people are getting used to the new system. Here we just come and order and enjoy. There we have to make everything. So I want to put every process system in place before our members come. So that you are really proud when you come and enter the building. I can assure you it's really a top-notch place where you really enjoy, and we are going to do so many of events there, and that will be the place in Chennai for management. I can assure you that is going to happen very soon. Already people who come and see, they go gaga seeing the building and seeing the infrastructure what we created. I can assure you the chairs, each of the chairs we got from Featherlight, paying almost 4,000 rupees. Each one has got a handrest and so comfortable thing. Even your lecture is bored, you can go to sleep so beautifully comfortable. You'll be very comfortable. I can assure you. So very good air conditioning system, absolutely noiseless, 36 stands. Why I'm telling, very good. We have paid attention to every single details so that the people who come there to learn, happily learn, and also go back proud that they are part of the infrastructure which is a world class actually. And coming to today's event, once again, very warm welcome to all the viewers who are watching this program live. I know the uncommon leader become little uncommon for some time because the chairman got busy, plus we also got too many events, that's the reason. So we're having but it's worth the wait because we're going to have one of the finest speakers. Before I come to this event, let me also tell you briefly what's happening. April 12th, we're having a power talk on simple regression, progress and business analytics. It's happening in MMA Seminar Hall at Patari Road. And we are also planning to do a major launching of the event on either 14th of April, before April, bringing in high-profile people, so get everybody to the MMA building. We're trying to do that. It depends upon the availability of a couple of top-notch speakers. Otherwise, these events are confirmed to happen. Then on the 18th of April, we have a cryptocurrency. Sharadul Amarchand Mangalda is going to happen. Because crypto is one which is bothering many people. The banks have put restrictions. The government is not sure what's happening. US government also said quite a bit of US bankers also put some. So it's better to understand before you deal with the cryptocurrencies. You don't lose money. And otherwise, at least good to have knowledge about what is cryptocurrency. Otherwise, I know that some of my people who are invested, the person who invented cryptocurrency, who part of the partner, is son of one of our members. I know you met Dr. Srinivasan from US. He's his son, who is the one who invented, and he came and spoke in MMA platform about, not about cryptocurrency, it's about other one. It's about... Then we have a book reading session on 26th April. This is again happening at MMA Seminar Hall. Besides that, we are planning number of other events, workshops, those things which I am not discussing with you now. But the idea is to enjoy this evening program. And soon you will be moving to our own place to come and enjoy the events there. Good library will be there and good place. So I think I'm already like one of the events of television. I'm hyping every time you come here, but you will be really, really happy to come and attend the thing. And coming to today's Uncommon Leader Empowering Entrepreneurship, I think is worth the wait. We have got one of the finest person to come and speak to us, who done some fantastic work in the field which AVIS will introduce to you, and to be in a great corporate job, live it and work on NGOs and work not only in Tamil Nadu, working in Haryana and Delhi and different locations, and touching so many lives and making the people happy. I think it requires a fantastic, it really requires a lot of passion, and many of us have a passion to continuously execute and come to a level what is outstanding, and we're all indeed privileged and honored to have with us today Sriram Ayer. He is a social entrepreneur, founder of NalandaWay Foundation, and as usual to chair the session we got AVIS. May I request AVIS and Mr. Sriram Ayer to come on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our distinguished speaker today. Yes, as usual, formal introduction of AVIS. I think it doesn't need introduction. AVIS is a Happiness Curator and Author, falls like a rose petal. He is also a principal coordinator of Workplaces Happiness Firm, and just a few minutes back he discussed we are going to have a very big seminar soon, as soon as possible, on all about happiness actually. And that we will get to know more, but over to AVIS.
Thank you, Vijay. So to the last program at the E Hotel, sad for the E Hotel, but I think we are all going to enjoy being at this highly publicized, highly promoted new venue led by Group Captain Vijay and his team. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. With me here is Sriram Ayer, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Uncommon Leader program itself before I introduce Sriram to you. Today's session is part of the series which we call the Uncommon Leader. We conceived of the idea of the Uncommon Leader to bring in perspectives from outside the corporate or business arena. And these perspectives are aimed at enriching our understanding of what empowers entrepreneurship. All activity in life is about leadership. Either we are leading in our personal lives or we are leading in our professional lives. And all aspects of leadership are often understood as management focused, which is untrue. There are people outside the scope of business who are demonstrating great leadership. They are people who are driven by a sense of purpose. They are people who stand by their value systems, and they're people who have a clear vision for where they're going in life. We bring you those stories in the Uncommon Leader series. And when we bring those stories, what Vani and I often discuss between us is there a teachable point of view? Can we learn something from this person? And so each story is carefully examined before we even bring it to Group Captain Vijay Kumar and propose saying, hey, this is the person that we have next on our schedule. So a fair amount of thought goes in there, and so the series is not called Uncommon Leader just like that. We are looking for leaders who are not commonly found in the corporate arena, but from whom we can all learn. Now, why do Vani and I do this? We are driven by our own purpose. Our life's purpose for Vani and me is to inspire happiness. That's why our workplace happiness firm, we run a workplace happiness firm called AV Initiatives, and we have a focus on reminding people that it is important to be non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering in life if you want to perform in life, in any arena. And that's our life's purpose. I've written a book about this. It's called Fall Like a Rose Petal. There is an app in my name, AVIS Viswanathan, that's the name. If you can download it from Google Play or from the App Store and follow me. And I do share my learnings from life from different people, from different events over there. And the whole idea is to enrich people with perspective. And so that's why Vani and I curate this series. This particular series gives us great joy because we have a fantastic partnership with Group Captain Vijay Kumar and his team. It's seamless. We guys work on the email and we schedule dates. The calendar is scheduled and everything works to precision, including an on-time start. So it's a joy working with you, Group Captain, and I'm looking forward to taking this series and bringing it to your office where we will be in state-of-the-art environment, right? That's the future for the Uncommon Leader. But right now, let's come to today's conversation, which is with the Uncommon Leader, Sriram Ayer. Thank you, Sriram, for joining us. Let me hand you the mic, turn it on for you. The way we will... Can you turn on this mic, please? It is on? Ange on panama. Got it? Got it? Yeah. So thank you, Sriram, for joining us. How does it feel? Do you feel good? Are you comfortable?
I am. Thank you. Thank you, Avis, for inviting me.
It's a joy. Let me introduce Sriram to you. Sriram is, and we go back about a decade. We've been following NalandaWay around the time that it was conceived in 2005. We saw the creativity with which Sriram Ayer built NalandaWay. I'll talk a little bit about the organization itself, but in a moment. So we know Sriram from that time, but it was always from a distance and through the work that his fabulous organization does. Sometime in 2015, was it, we did a conversation with you in my other series, which I host at the Odyssey bookstore. It's called Bliss Catchers, where Sriram was one of my guests that evening, and we talked about what made him get into social entrepreneurship. We talked about that part of your journey, but we didn't go into the entrepreneurship part of it at all, and that's what I hope to do today, Sriram, with you. So Sriram's story is very interesting. As I see him, he is very, very committed, he's very creative, and he's deeply compassionate. Now, we all are very compassionate people. We get disturbed, we get angered with what's happening around us. But let me tell you, our compassion stops with that anger. We don't go to work on it. There are very few people who take what disturbs them, what provokes them, what makes them angry. There are very few people who go to work on that. And Sriram is one of them. He's not only acted on what disturbed him, he has sustained it and he has made it his life's purpose. Sometime around the turn of the century, Sriram kept a corporate job. He has an MBA, and it was a well-paying corporate job. So life was set. And that's when the Gujarat Riots happened. It might have faded from public memory now, but the Gujarat Riots were really, really repulsive. They turned us inside out, whoever heard about it, whenever it was talked about. And I think as a person, it still troubles me a lot that the riots happened. But Sriram watched the riots and the aftermath of the riots from close quarters. And he was restless. Couple of years of this restlessness building up in him, one day in December 2004, a young boy, maybe about 10 or 11 years old, maybe 12 years old, was selling agarbathis and came into his office. The boy told Sriram that he was doing this as an evening job so that he could pay for his school education. Sriram connected the dots between what troubled him, the violence that happened in Godhra, and the child who was working an evening job in order to pay for education. He connected the two dots, gave up his corporate job, and sometime in February, March 2005, set up NalandaWay to bring art in any form, films, radio, visual arts, music, theater, dance, bring art in any form into the classroom, and through that heal the violence that society is seeing today. And he decided to focus on the underprivileged community of children. As we speak, 136 schools are being touched in Tamil Nadu, Delhi and Haryana, and 54,000 lives are being touched, young children are being touched. And over the last 13 years that NalandaWay has been around, 1 million children have been impacted. That's what Sriram Ayer has been doing. So I'm personally very, very delighted to be sharing a space with Sriram, somebody who's gone to act on what disturbed him and has sustained that action with a sense of purpose. So this conversation is about that journey. And we'll look at the different layers of that journey as we go along. From a timing point of view, I will be in conversation with Sriram till about 7:05, and then we will open the floor for questions from the audience. And as usual, somebody reminded me I had forgotten about my free hugs. So there are free hugs for all of you who stay back and don't leave the room when Q&A is going on. Okay? So please respect the guest and the guest story. So please stay back and ask your questions. Around 7:25, I will hand it back to Group Captain for his closing remarks, and we'll all be on our way home at 7:30 sharp. Okay? So that's the format. Thank you, Sriram, once again for joining us. Let's start the conversation with the first question. Talk a little bit about your life as it was when you were working. You must have been in your 20s then, and you were having this well-paying job. So before Godhra happened, before 2002, how was your life? Can you just describe a little bit about that phase of your life?
Thank you, AVIS. That was quite a glorious introduction. I don't know if I deserve them, all of them. Uh, I think I was really loving my job. I think it was not a decision to start NalandaWay because I was disappointed with what I was doing. So I was involved in a company which was a Indo-Dutch venture which sold customer relationship management software. So it was primarily automating all customer-facing functions of any business. Salesforce automation, customer service, call center operations. But I was excited about doing that because at a very, very short span of time, in my early 20s, joining as a consultant, I became the director of Southeast Asia in less than when I was 27. So as a part of my job is to meet CEOs, CXOs, talk about their operational process needs with respect to looking at customers. And those were also the early .com boom times, and internet was just getting to begin. So there's a lot of excitement around technology and also using technology for serving customers. And that really, I used that opportunity to travel the world, meet customers around the world. As a 20-something person, I would be in the boardroom of a large multinational company in Frankfurt. These are great opportunities. And to a certain point, I was extremely an arrogant, very headstrong person too.
Seriously?
I was.
I can't picture you that way at all.
So life has taught me a lot of lessons, and the last decade has quite changed me as a person. But I think it was also because I think I was somebody who was treated like a blue-eyed boy, but also that I was capable of delivering that level of result, which was not even from a very Chennai city, India city point of view. It was my impact, my contribution was translating in terms of results in a multi-country kind of approach. At one point in time, I remember was giving a presentation to Eastman Kodak. The company is bankrupt today, no more there. They had 7,000 salespeople in the US alone, and so I was giving a presentation to the entire 7,000 people sitting out of their office in where was their office? Somewhere in California, and it was quite an awesome feeling of being able to stand up there and speak about why they should be talking about Salesforce automation to people mostly in their 40s and 50s who've sold a camera film all their life. It was a huge high. Yeah.
And you were riding that wave.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I can relate to a couple of points over there. One is that when things are going fine for you in life, when I say fine, everything is working to a financial plan that you got in your head. Everything is working because you're working hard and you're working with integrity. You assume and you believe that you are in control. I thought the same way too. So I was once that typically man in a hurry, angry young man who was arrogant and professionally very arrogant. I was that, but life has humbled me too. So I can completely relate to that. And then life teaches you lessons. In my case, it was a bankruptcy where life taught me that you're not in control. Life is in control. So I can completely relate to that. Thank you for bringing that up. It sets a tone for what happens later on in your life. So my next question is, what about, I've never been to Godhra. Okay, I've never been to Gujarat around that time. But then sitting miles away in Chennai, just hearing about what happened, even now as I speak about it, I'm so disturbed. So how disturbed were you? And what took you to Gujarat at that time? How disturbed were you? And how do you define that sense of inner equilibrium being, stirred? Stirred is the right word. So how do you describe that? Do you want to go back and tell us about how you were feeling at that time?
So my reason, I was not in Godhra, so I was in Baroda. Baroda, actually 2 months after, March was the actual Godhra incident.
Right.
I was in May of 2002. I had gone there to meet Thermax because we were doing some automation for Thermax or in the process of evaluating it. So I had gone there to meet some of their distributors and dealers. And the riots precipitated and happened over several months. Vadodara has a very long history of communal divide and riots happening right from pre-independence time. Um, Gujarat, for people who know, have a very, very strong divide between Hindu-Muslim. And these fault lines can be broken by some of these incidents. Um, for me, what really shook me, one was the capability of a set of organized people to inflict pain and violence on otherwise communally happy living together neighborhood. Keeping the politics aside, what surprised me was what makes us so hateful of one another. What makes us do the kind of things that we would not do otherwise in a very peaceful, happy growing environment that we come from. What makes us do that? What in our behavior changes what we can become? That was something that really, really troubled me. I wanted to understand, not from a point of doing something about it at that point in time. I was actually looking at the anthropological or spiritual questions of why human beings behave this way. Right from questioning our own belief system, I think possibly we need a religion or a policeman to have a stick. Otherwise, we're just bad people pretending to be good. I have always have this example, and it's possibly only true in India, right? You are in a two-wheeler, you're seeing an orange light, amber light getting to red, you're close to the zebra crossing, you don't see a police guy, you jump the signal. And if there is a police guy, you might not. So our morality is very relative to a policeman or a god who possibly is our check. That's how I began the conversation. It's that we just basically people with animal instincts, that we would inflict our anger and violence against people if left loose. That's where it began.
And this was an inquiry within yourself.
Yeah.
You asked these questions to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
And so this troubled me. So I was not actually looking at trying to start an NGO. I was not till that point in time. And then you start reading about it. You see the picture of Qutbuddin Ansari. For people who are familiar, there's this tailor who begs to be pardoned. That became very famous.
That became the face of the riots.
Yeah. And what makes us do that? So that really troubled me. I've met a lot of people in this field. I met people who are working in improving peaceful conversations during conflicts. As I moved along, the thing that occurred to me was we're all extremely humane, empathetic people by default. But we're not trained to act in extreme situations. We just do not know how to deal with extreme situations. So if you're not taught continuously to be empathetic to people, maybe you'll not deal with empathy when you're forced to act in situations such as that. When your security is threatened or when your loved one are threatened, maybe you will be criminal in the way you'll deal with things. So which just means that we need to be taught to be empathetic, otherwise we'll resign back to our animalistic instinct. So which is a reassuring thing, because I can teach somebody to be more respectful, empathetic, giving, sharing. So from a place that we're all acting to be good, I believe that we are good people, but lots of faults, which means we can work with you. We can teach you to be empathetic. We can teach you to be tolerant. Which means we're all possible. It's not doomsday.
So that was the thought process.
Yeah.
So one was a question that arose within you: why do we behave the way we behave? And B, the discovery that something can be done about it.
Yeah.
So you were doing all of this inquiry within yourself. Yeah. It was quietly being done while you kept your job.
Yeah.
So what happened in your life in December 2004 when that boy walked into your life? Yeah. Was that a moment of, let me take this action now? And how did you connect the dot between violence in society and a child working an evening shift to keep a day in school. How did you connect the dots? Was it a one moment of awakening, or did you go back and think about it? Did you talk about it to somebody? How did this happen?
So, in all this mental constipation, if I were to use it, that was all happening. It was very 30,000 feet. I didn't know how to touch and feel anything. But the clue is, if I knew you better, I would understand you better, there are more chances that I would be more tolerant to you, even if you're different, right? So, if I don't know somebody at all, there are more chances I can carry my prejudices with you. So, how do we create those connections? How do we create that conversations with people who are poles apart, who have customs which are different, whose religion which is different, language which is different? So that was the conversation that was happening. So when that boy walks into my office at 8 o'clock in the evening, into my cabin, and he basically says, do you want to buy agarbathis? And he was neatly dressed, well-oiled hair, carrying a backpack. He didn't have footwear. He said his father had run away when he was very, very young. His mother makes those agarbathis. His sister helps her. He goes to school during the day, and at the end of the day, goes into different parts of Chennai to make a living. Now, this is a boy who is perseverant, hardworking, can make it big in life. What's possibly missing is a mentor who could possibly be a guiding light to this boy to suggest the opportunities on education and career. But what if that mentor was coming in from an opposite community, and that as a process, that mentor who's an empathetic person, as the objective of making this boy somebody better, gets to understand this community, both these conversations can happen. So it was like a eureka moment for me, suddenly feeling, oh yes, now I have a method to that madness. And at that point in time, it was then in that night I took a decision to quit.
That night?
That night.
Okay.
I quit in a week's time.
Uh-huh.
And much to everybody's disappointment.
What was your family's reaction?
Oh, they thought I was crazy. And much to many years, they really thought I'm like the sabbatic, I'm on a sabbatical or something, and the prodigal son will possibly come back, which never happened. Because at that point, in fact, many people would ask me, maybe it would have been an easier thing. You volunteered on a weekend in an NGO, understood what to do, perhaps take a job and then you figure out, so you take it one step at a time. But at that point in time, I felt that I could only do it. There is no rational explanation to this. It's just the feeling that I've been, all my life I've taken decisions like that. There is a strong intuition of taking a decision, and I'm overpowered by that, and I feel that I had to be the one who's taking that. And I took it.
That's how you took that decision?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to explore that decision, but there's a beautiful learning over here. The learning is that many people ask me this whenever I talk about purpose. When I just use the word life's purpose. For me, Vani and me, it's inspiring happiness. For Sriram, it's to do something about the violence that grips our society. People ask me, and you may be faced with this question also, what is your life's purpose? And where do I go looking for my life's purpose? What we have learned from life is that if you stop investing yourself in the earning a living paradigm, most of us are caught in the earning a living paradigm. We are earning money so we can pay bills. We are earning money so that we can pay bills. We are earning money so that our aspirations are fulfilled. That is the earning a living paradigm. If you stop being only there and focus on living, focus on living means look at the larger picture of life. What is happening around us? How am I responding to the stimuli around me? In his case, he was in riot-torn Gujarat, and he asked those fundamental questions. Those existential questions are exploration into the aspect of living and not just earning a living. When you are living, when you are tuned to living and not just earning a living, your purpose will find you. Your life's purpose will find you. And that moment for him happened when the boy walked into his life. And he was able to connect the dots. That's really how it happens. That's why in French they say, for purpose, the word in French is a phrase actually. It's raison d'être. Raison means reason, and the être means for existence. Now, remove the word existence, because existence is more to do with inanimate objects, non-living objects. So reason for living, reason for your creation as a human being, that's your life's purpose, and your purpose will always find you if you're tuned to living, and that's how it really happened. When you took your decision, Sriram, to quit, and you said you took that decision because you intuitively felt, and this intuitive feeling, just to add in a simpler way, if you have all watched Vinnai Thandi Varuvaya, there is a character who will keep on asking Simbu this question, Inge enna solludhu? Jesse nu solluda? So like that sense of intuition will prompt you that this is the direction that you have to go into. There will be no empirical data in front of you. There will be no Excel sheet. There will be no vision statement. There will be no, in some cases, like in Sriram's case, there isn't even a predecessor, somebody who's walked that path, and you're going to walk that path behind that person. There's no role model to put out there and say, I'm going to do this. So I want to come to that point. Isn't insecurity often a very close element that comes calling when you take a decision such as that? And how did you deal with your insecurity? What did you do to tell yourself that I'm chucking this job and it's okay to be without money when I need it sometimes, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do? How did you convince yourself? What practical methods did you use?
So for me, I didn't worry too much about money. I didn't worry too much about incomes, but I was worried about inactivity.
Okay.
Because I was coming out of a job which really consumed in a way that was beautiful and powerful and contributing. And for the next 6 months to a year, I would hardly have anything to do. As much, coming from a background of non-social work or education background, I really had to even figure out a way to negotiate into a slum to find whom do I work with. He knows the story, and half the time you're constantly looked, judged by your friends, your family, your girlfriend, and everybody thinking that, okay, what is he going to do now? Is he going to come back, not come back? So you have to run away. I would go to Nageshwara Park every day morning, dress up like one Mannar and company, and go there every day at 10 o'clock and stay there all the day, because I cannot not look at the eyes, because it's scary for me. It was scary because people are judging my action. It was scary because I do not know, I am convinced of what I'm doing also. As much as I'm putting up a brave front, I knew it all, I have no clue. Especially in the first 1-2 years, you have so much self-doubt of why you're doing what you're doing. But I'm an extremely optimistic person always in life. I mean, I'm not an insecure person, but and with this certain romantic sense to life, but also a certain doggedness in the way I believe in something, I'll just go running behind it. So that kept me going.
That kept you going.
Yeah.
That's amazing you use the word optimism. Many people misunderstand optimism. Optimism is not about yella seriyaidum. It's not about that feeling. Optimism is yella seriya varum-gra nambike. It's not a loose statement. It's not just built on a phrase that you throw around to yourself. It's about a deep sense of belief. And so I'm glad you talked about optimism. How do you translate something like a sense of intuition coupled with your native optimism, something that you're born with, the way you're wired, and come up with an idea like NalandaWay? What was the process? Did you first go to one school and work there? How did you get into this thing of art and classrooms? How did the vision for NalandaWay really unfold? What were the first baby steps that you took?
Yeah. So when we first began, it was primarily finding a mentor. Can we find a child? Can we find opportunities and activities that we can help a mentor work with the child? So that is a way of conversation that we began. As we went along, we looked at children on the streets, not going to school. I remember this distinctly. It was in Ayodhya Kuppam, which is opposite to today's city center. And we saw boys in their 11 and 12 years playing on this street, middle of the day, not going to school. So I asked them, why aren't you going to school? And the first thing is, school are boring, teachers beating, I'm bored, I'm not interested. These are all the stories. So we did an exercise. We said, okay, which subject are you maximum bored? They said social science, history. And we got them, so I'm somebody who has a bias towards the art. I'm not an artist of any sort, but I love the arts. I mean, theater, music, arts, I love them all. So I had a lot of theater friends along, and we said, okay, let's do an exercise. We'll take one chapter, which you hate the most, convert that with the kids, workshop it, and actually convert that historical incident into a play. At the end of 4 days, these kids workshopped it, wrote the dialogues, and performed a play. And at the end of it, we asked them to take the same questions which the textbook asked them to do, and they remember the dates, the kings, the names, the situations, and they did it well.
Wow.
So which just means that kids are naturally curious. They're consciously looking for knowledge as long as it's fun and interesting. If it's boring, if it's pedantic, it's not interesting, they won't listen. They won't learn. Now, that was a shift in our thinking, which just means that if I can use art, an artful way to make learning fun, cut to a little more learning, we realize that we just cannot just deal with conversations with mentor because the classrooms are really, really bad. And at the core of it, going back to Gujarat, hate and violence is a consequence. Fear and ignorance is the cause of it all. And fear permeates our society. Fear is the problem for our learning. When there is fear, there is no learning, there is no growth. And this is true especially when you're growing up in schools. I went to a school recently outside of Madurai, and this is exactly what the teachers tell me. 20 years before, the parent would come and admit a child, "Kanna mattu utrunga sir, enga vana thol urchirunga." Today, the teachers have a problem because kids are asking questions. They're basically saying, I want children to be obedient and afraid of me. That's the problem. Now, if I were to look at fear as the only way I'm going to control a student inside a classroom, I'm not going to be creative. I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to be interested. I'm going to be doing. And for me, my school was that. My whole experience, my entire life, my schooling was the most stressful point of my time. Because it's driven on fear. It's driven on an exam. It's driven on my unit test. And we said, if I make art come into my classroom and make learning fun, exam becomes incidental. I will learn with joy, and anything that you test me, I will do it better. That was the innovation that came in. Yeah.
Fantastic. Did you use for yourself any kind of mentors or advisors that you leaned on, because you were creating something which had not been hypothetically tested in the, I'm using the word marketplace, but here what I mean is among the target audience. So you could have faced resistance from teachers, from schools, and these are all government-aided schools, so you can't make an inroad so easily. So how did you approach the idea of taking the idea to the market, to the target audience? How did you school yourself for this?
Sure. I think my corporate experience also came into play in terms of how do you build your allies and how do you build systems and processes around it. I think my first experience was during my introspection days before even I quit my job. I saw this man, T.V. Venkatraman. He was the former chief secretary of Tamil Nadu. He promoted a movement which is interfaith dialogue. So basically, Christians, Muslims, Hindus coming together and reading each other's scriptures in a way to make sense of it and make to understand. And he had written an article in the Hindu. So I had actually gone to meet him and tell him all my lofty dreams and ideas. At that point in time, what I was really seeking was somebody to be non-judgmental and tell me it's good, get on with it. And that was so important for me because everybody is telling me how it will not work. Everybody was telling me how I'm wasting my time. I needed somebody who to tell me, I know, I don't know 100%, but it's okay, move on in life. I think he gave me that non-judgmental being a mentor. And he was also somebody who connected a lot of indoors into government offices. Because he could talk to the IAS officers and the secretaries, you had the entry and access to it. And at different points of time, different people came about. I would also want to recall Subrato Bagchi of Mindtree Consulting, and he was somebody, a mentor, from a point of looking at why I need to look at some of these processes this way, how I need to approach scale in a certain way. He continues to be, I engage and talk to him with respect to various decisions that I'm going to be doing. So there are different people who came on board. But I did not also go to people who are practitioners at many points in time, because I don't want to be colored by their baggage. So I also did not go to educationists who came with their PhDs, not so much at that point in time, because I wasn't sure what I was doing. So I had to prove it myself. I had to learn from the ground before I can talk to and I validate with somebody.
So you allowed influences that gave you objective and, in a way, candid feedback, and plus supported you with the right mentorship. You allowed those influences, but you did not want predictable people with predictable patterns of thinking clouding your own vision, right? That's really what you're saying. That's amazing, because as entrepreneurs, and who's an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is basically somebody who takes an idea and takes a risk with it. Now, when you start any idea, you don't have to invest in it, you don't have to be an entrepreneur in the conventional sense. The moment you say you're going to lose weight, for example, there'll be 10 people who will come and tell you, no, you can't do it. You're going to diet niya, nadagadu. So, in any context in life, naysayers are abundant. And if you're going to listen to people that are going to tell you, no, this is not going to happen, then you'll never get started. That's a big lesson in entrepreneurship. You got to go on and do what you believe in. Andy Grove says it very beautifully. He says that entrepreneurship is the art of negotiating every step as you move forward, because you don't know which pebble is going to trip you over. The art of negotiating every step as you go along. You don't know which pebble is going to trip you over. So you do go, but you are moving forward. You are watchful, but you're not scared. That's really what we are picking up from Sriram's story, right? Was that a good summary?
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about something that convinced you, an event that happened in the course. So we are somewhere in the timeline of 2005, 2007, 8, the early years of NalandaWay. So an event that happened that told you, within you, that Sriram, this is it. This is what you're born for. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And did you at all have a plan B that you spiked that when that call came from within, or did you never have a plan B?
So I never had a plan B.
So there was no idea that said, if NalandaWay, the concept, idea, institution, enterprise fails, then I'm going back to a job. You never had that?
No, I did not have a parachute.
Okay.
I didn't even think I need one. And I think it was not because I was setting up an organization. I think I was setting up for myself for life. I was, rightly as you say, I think it was more a purpose that was running. And I don't know if I made a conscious decision at all. I think, I completely believe in Sharanagati. It's just, you just carried. And I truly believe that. And everything is a God sent, things that appear before you. And it will appear. And so there was no plan B at all.
There wasn't a plan B.
Yeah. But at different points in time, I have asked myself, is this what I signed up for? Early years, 2006, 7, 8, 9, we were doing work across the country. We were working in Kashmir, we were working in Bihar, Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. But a lot of it were very, very short-term workshops, creative workshops, working with conflict-oriented children, helping them express themselves through films and theater and all of them. But then one of the days I asked myself, is this what I signed up for? Because what tends to happen is that when the world talks about you, you're called in conferences, you're across the world, you're written about, there's a delusion that happens where you start to think you're more than important than what your job is. And you also realize that the joy that you get of working with children itself is impact, not what the children are getting. And it is so easily that you can get carried away by that. And that was I think a biggest blessing for me, because then at that point of time we realized that somehow our popularity, our exposure is at the cost of that child. There is an ethical question here. And at that point in time, we realized that if I am not going, it's just no more about sustaining an organization. We were close to 40, 50 people working in this organization with $1 million budgets.
Wow.
And at that point in time, it was so easy to be carried away doing what I was doing. But it came back to the central question, is this why I signed up for this? And at that point in time, in 2009, I made a decision to shut down everything around the country, come back to Chennai again, and we made ourselves 3 cardinal rules. 1, we will work with a child for life. We will work in any program that is not long-term and deep enough, we're not going to be doing anything. If we get into a community, whether there is a donor or not a donor, we're there for life. And if our resources are not going to support that, so be it. We'll only work with, say, 100 children, that's fine, good enough. Because I also believed, and I strongly believe, that not everything requires to be scaled. Small is beautiful too. As long there is purpose to it, as long as there is a credible, verifiable impact that can come out of that. And that changed NalandaWay itself. That was a huge tipping point for us because of what we stand for today. Today, 2 years before, we won the best innovation in the country by USAID, Government of India, for using arts in education. We were one of the top 3 innovations in the country. And that wouldn't have happened because of that decision in 2009. Because we wouldn't have gone to the drawing board, we would be so consumed doing all that we were doing, and we wouldn't have been known today for the kind of conviction and emphasis that we have for using arts inside a classroom. So that was, to answer your question, there have been many points in time I've gone back to asking myself, is this why I'm doing what I'm doing? And a lot of it is very intuitive. A lot of it possibly does not have data, but it is to do with coming back to asking the original question, why are we doing what we're doing?
This why question is what purpose is all about. Why are you here on this planet? Why are you created human? Why do you exist? In the case of an institution, why do you exist? And what will be lost if you cease to exist as an institution? When you ask these questions, then you are in the realm of purpose. So the point he talked about, plan B, I can resonate very well. You know, in a decade-long bankruptcy that Vani and I are going through, many people have asked me, why not a plan B? Why not go and do something else? In his case, he was fortunate enough to learn the essence of life, which is, he calls it Saranagati. Okay? He was fortunate to learn that lesson or be intuitively blessed with that learning early on in life. In my case, I personally struggled to reach that point of total acceptance that things are not happening because of me. Things are happening in spite of me. That learning came a big way when it came to me. And I discovered that there is no point in theorizing a plan B, because the master plan really has no flaws. And if you're set on a course and doors are opening and people are coming into your life, that's very important. That's the journey. The other part I'm picking up and I'm resonating with you is this question, why are we doing what we are doing? And we got to keep asking that question, because otherwise you can get distracted with the pulls and pressures of running an enterprise, with the glamour of it sometimes, with the distress of it sometimes. And so the why question is very important. I think that small is beautiful is a big lesson. You don't need to be an entrepreneur who's controlling the whole world. It's fine if you're impacting people in a meaningful way with your product, with your service. That's what he's saying when he's saying small is beautiful. In other words, if you're not making a profit as an entrepreneur, but are having a huge turnover, and you're not making a profit, it is meaningless. You're probably better off with a smaller operation, but a larger margin. In an entrepreneurial context, in a business context, that's really what he's saying. Let's move on. Let me ask you my next question. In terms of today's NalandaWay has a fascinating vision stemming from a deeper purpose. So as I see it, your vision is to put art in every classroom. And the purpose is to use art through these classroom initiatives to heal violence in society, right? That's really what drives you, wakes you up every morning, all of you. So when you look at NalandaWay today, how are you actualizing this vision? What kind of programs do you have? And how does this pan out in reality? I mean, walk us through how does NalandaWay work on? What are your current projects?
Sure. So today we have three important verticals. One is how do I use arts, when I use the word arts here, it's both visual and performing arts, to improve primary school learning. Just to give you a sense of a statistic in the country, we have 98 to 99% enrollment in standard 1 today across the country. Mid and northern states could be lesser, but South India, it's 99%. Now this becomes 46% when a kid reaches 8th standard. So which means 54% of children drop out. And the biggest reason for that is that learning does not happen standard 1 to standard 5. There is no joy in learning. There is lack of relevance to their lives. A child in Kashmir learns about eating a mango, which can be as ridiculous as that. But it's also coming from a fear-led way of what happens in a classroom. So what we do here is to focus on primary school, wherein we've developed a curriculum which teaches teachers to be using creative games inside the classroom, use of art, craft and storytelling to teach math, science, languages, and provide them all the mentorship and materials for them to learn that better. So which means today we work in 130 government and government aided schools, wherein all that they do is to learn their subjects through a creative artful method. That's one of our largest program. I think close to 42,000 children go through this every week. Wow. Across the academic year. The second thing that we do is teach arts itself. So we run 12 art labs that we've set up inside government schools. We have 8 such labs in Chennai, 2 in Coimbatore and 2 in Delhi. These are labs which teach fine arts, music, dance, theatre, filmmaking and photography by expert professionals who go directly into schools and teach them. This is for children above the age of 6th standard. The purpose being that every person, irrespective of what you might want to become, need to have an art. If you do not have the aesthetic of an art, if you do not possess an artful disposition, the way you look at life, you will be fearful of life. You will not be able to express it when you're confronted with challenges. So the goal here is every child gets to have an arts program in the schools that we operate on. And these are not extracurricular, so we work with the government to ensure these programs happen during school hours. And there's a calendar that is set out all through the academic year. So for that school and the schools of the neighborhood, they come to the art lab and have access to this. And the last thing that we do is to look at behavior. So we look at 2 important groups. One is the adolescents. The adolescents today is, adolescent depression is very, very high. And one of the biggest factors that contribute to this is a lack of self-confidence. So we run a program called Kanavu Pattarai, which is a 4-day residential program of using music, art and movement to find ways to improve their self-confidence. We primarily work with children between the ages of 13 to 17 and look at improving their self-confidence through this. but we also now run an exclusive center which is specifically for children with Down syndrome, autism, and other intellectual disabilities. This is in the government school in Velachery, where art, music, movement is taught for learning any form of rehabilitation that they're going through. So all our programming, all our activities is around these three buckets. Is to use arts to improve learning, is to improve arts to improve creativity, imagination, and life skills, and to use arts for change towards positive behavior or rehabilitation.
So that's the body of work that you engage in through the academic year, right? How many people make this possible for you across 136 schools?
So we have 27 people working full time.
In NalandaWay?
In NalandaWay,
Okay.
in 4 offices.
Okay.
So we have an office in Chennai, we have an office in Delhi, we have an office in Coimbatore, we have an office in Kumbakonam. So our people work in all of these locations. I have 2 of my colleagues sitting there silently in the audience.
Okay.
But we also work with a lot of external trainers as well, whom we use them, who actually go train the children as well in our art labs. So they would be another.
They're artists.
They're artists.
They're
and
professional artists,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So.
So do they volunteer, or do you compensate them for their time as well?
So most of them, all of them actually are paid for them. In fact, most of them, this happens to be their only livelihood.
Oh, seriously? Okay.
Yeah. So they're like students of the government arts college, fine arts colleges. And it's very, very hard to also survive in an art world, being an artist. So most of them, teaching becomes their only profession too. So they're paid, but we also have volunteers coming on board and teaching the kids as well.
Right. So let me ask you, at the end of 13 years, you must have had a fair amount of graduating students, right? What gives you the greatest joy? Any story that you can tell us of someone who probably was in class 4 or 5 when you started working with them in their school, and today has gone on to do what they're doing, or are there countless stories like this already?
Many of them. But what's more, I want to get back to the original Agarbathi boy. After that incident, I lost him. I couldn't find him. It took me 5 to 6 years to find Vinod again. Because people have heard my story, he was selling somewhere and they told him, you need to meet him. And today, then he came.
Seriously, that's the way you reconnected with
Yeah,
Vinod?
yeah.
Okay.
And it took me a long while, and we sponsored. By that time, he was close to finishing 11th and 12th. We sponsored, and he was part of our program again, and we brought him back to Kanavapatrai and a whole lot of that. We sponsored his college. Today, he works in Breaks India, but he still sells agarbathis. Wow. He doesn't want to give up. But what is also important, I mean, there are enough a number of people who become journalists, who work in software companies.
These are NalandaWay graduates.
Yes.
Okay.
And they work in advertising agencies. They work in creative industries. There are also people who have continued to come back and volunteer with us and work with us.
One of your people made a film recently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? Would you like to talk about that? I'm suddenly remembering this from a Facebook post.
Yeah. Well, he used to work with us.
Okay.
And he made this movie Magalir Mattum, which was a recent movie, and he was one of our projects team. And one of the NalandaWay child acts in that movie. Was that movie or the earlier movie maybe? He's part of that too. Yeah.
So people have that you have touched have gone on into mainstream life and have had newer avenues which would probably not have been available to them. I think when I met, one of the people I greatly respect is Suresh Krishna, and Suresh told me. I asked him, what gives you the greatest joy? He's retiring in April, and as the MD of the company. So I asked him, what gives you the greatest joy after almost 60 years at the helm? And he said, not the profits, not the globalization, but when my people come back and tell me that because of the work that they had with my company, they have gone on to send their children overseas for studies and their children are doing well, that gives me great joy. So I think the joy of an entrepreneurial journey is really coming from that deep sense of purpose. So when you see a person who's graduated from your class doing well in some chosen creative space, I think that pays for everything, for all the upheavals that you might have been through, right? I have a question related to what you were saying a little earlier, which is, if you take the way you've structured the offerings, the verticals, they're very innovative. You've addressed root causes by using the same format of art, but packaged in different forms. So I see a lot of innovation that you try with both your communities, which is your donor community, people that bring you the money, and people that you touch, your target audience, the children. For example, one of your most impactful programs was Artaratai Arpatam, right? And you had a Kannama project. So how important is it for you as the leader of the organization to sit with your team and brainstorm newer ideas? Because aren't you fighting for the same pie in the NGO market, right? You're approaching probably the same sponsors that other NGOs are approaching. So why would they give money to you? And how much of innovation goes into asking for this money creatively?
In my office, the person who's hated the most is me, because I'm actually putting the spanner in the works most of the time in terms of giving them new ideas. What I believe is, today all our operations are automated and online. So which means every process, every activity, every document, photograph, video is available online for even a donor to see. So at any given point of time, a donor can actually get a user ID access to get into a project online and actually see what's the status of the project and see the documents, the documentation. Which is also an innovation which most of NGOs, I don't know even 90% of the NGOs doing that, because we believe that the more transparent that you are, the more people are willing to trust you. Unfortunately, it's like Anju Veral, there are bad eggs too. So if you need to stand out, you need to be above than Caesar, So you need to be transparent, be much more process oriented. Today, we are the only among 8,000 NGOs which are certified by this international rating agency called GuideStar. We're only one of the 35 platinum certified NGOs in the country. Wow. On accountability and transparency. So these are consciously that we look out for, because we want to be above bar in the way we approach it. Second, we also want to look at a lot more excitement in the stakeholders. So when I look at stakeholders, it's not just my donor, it's also my media, it's people, all of us who need to constantly resonate to our vision is, if it's arts and children, then NalandaWay needs to be known. So it's to build that positioning in the mind of a journalist, in the mind of a potential donor, in the mind of opinion leaders, that we constantly also engage in projects which create that mind share in people. One of our biggest projects that now that we're that we've started, it's called the Chennai Children's Choir, which is basically composed of children whom we've auditioned and trained from all the corporation schools. It's 40 kids of them, and had actually been invited to perform at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. But for us, this is like a huge prestigious event for us, because this provides the showcasing of these kids, not just from a point that they can sing, but it's also to the communities that they belong to. That today in every kupam you will know that kid who's coming from there, oh, in the paye ella America pora. It's that aspiration that the kid has become. And I think that he becomes the role model. And also from a donor point of view, when we had to raise money to send these kids, it's 23 kids we need to send. Air tickets are not cheap. We need to raise 33 lakh rupees. And we decided 2 weeks back, we need to raise the money. We don't know where we're going to get. So we started a crowdfunding campaign. No idea. In 2 weeks' time, we've raised close to 15 lakhs. We have no idea who's contributed. These are not my friends. My friends could be a small portion of that. And so I think it's also based upon the mind share, which was strategically, consciously built over time, of making sure journalists understand, making sure opinion leaders understand if it's arts, it needs to be positioned as NalandaWay. So as much, there is a lot of strategy also of positioning it among opinion leaders that way.
I'm picking up a very important entrepreneurial lesson here. How do you want your product or service to stand out? Only when you create something of value which the customer cannot refuse and the competition cannot imitate. Only that will get picked up. And that's what I'm hearing you say, right? I'm trying to take away, glean a learning there. So as entrepreneurs, it's our duty as business people, as business leaders, it's our duty, it's something that we should watch out for, in not being me too, but how can you create value? How can you put something out there that customers cannot refuse and competition cannot imitate? And that's what will happen with NalandaWay's choir also, children's choir also. I'm sure you will get the remaining 15 in hopefully the next 2 to 3 weeks. And
Inshallah.
Your kids will go to Washington, D.C. because it's important that children of any background, get a global exposure, but most particularly children from the underprivileged segment of society, because if they are touched and they get the perspective that only a global event can do, then you've transformed their lives. So fantastic, good luck with that. Let me ask you, how do you deal with your lows? As the leader running an organization, you could be saddled with the challenges of running an organization. And my experience as a coach tells me that when an organization is turning 13, you are 13 now, you are literally like a human adolescent. So it could be pulling in different directions, could be getting distracted. So as the captain of the ship, how do you stay focused, keep your team engaged, and balance this whole thing between managing for vision and managing for results? How do you do this?
It's, I'm still learning. I'm still experimenting. We come up with weird ideas and fail of how to manage people. At the end of the day, today I believe that people will stick with you if what they do is bigger than them. If they're coming to do a job, then you're compared with the next best employer. But if there is a way that we can create an environment of joy and happiness in the organization, and if what they do has the potential of being multiple of X of their effort, which is bigger than themselves, then they see they are part of the overall purpose. I think it's consciously, how do we find that doing in the way they treat your colleague, in the way you make them feel responsible for something. I think we've learned that over time. I am somebody who needs to have people, which is also a problem, because then it's so difficult to point mistakes at people, to motivate them, at the same time telling them that you're not doing good at certain things. It's always a thin red line. But coming back to then, it also questions from a point of what's at this point of time, we're I think we're shy of a few things, shy of few lakhs of hitting 5 crore in terms of our annual turnover. But it also means a crucial tipping point of how much we want to scale. And that also involves how do we train people, how do we find people, where do we find people. People are also focused in their careers. How do we grow them? How do we make sure they see their personal growth coming out of that? These are challenges today. So it's no more your personal vision out of that. Their vision and their goals need to be met too. Which is the adolescence to the becoming an adult and being responsible.
And then you'll hear, you'll hit newer challenges, because when you get to middle age, then you become lethargic, and you get that midlife crisis. So, but interesting point. I think the summary of what you said lies in a statement that you made. Can you tell your people that what they are doing is bigger than them? If you can get this message across to your people, you have learnt the art of managing people, which is broken down. People will do anything for you if you tell them why they have to do it, how they can and must do it, what they will get when they do it, and how they're doing it shapes not only their own destiny, but the destiny of others. When they understand these four elements, they will understand this point that you're saying, what I'm doing is bigger than me. That is what motivates people, not salaries, not incentives alone. All that is fine, but I think people come when they are called with a higher sense of purpose. And I think that is both your opportunity and your challenge.
Yeah.
Right?
More challenge.
More challenge. Okay. I have a last question for Sriram before I throw it open to the audience. Free hugs are waiting for you, so don't run away. Okay. But the last question is something personal. You can choose not to answer this. I've been meaning to ask you this. I didn't ask you this in the past or in person ever. Has being single helped in having this maniacal focus in life? Is that an added advantage in the pursuit of a higher purpose? And I also heard from you in passing about 3 months back that you have an adopted daughter. So can you tell us a little bit about these two dimensions to your life?
So the first question, I don't think there was a plan or a design. The two guys are laughing at me, but at my colleagues. But I think I'm single today. So at the point, there was no plan. There was no plan of being married or not being married. It just didn't happen. But my mentor, T.V. Venkatraman, would say that if you were married, you wouldn't have reached what you've done. Possibly there's truth to it at some level. But, well, with respect to Piku, I call her Piku, Preeti, she's a NalandaWay child as well. I mean, she came in to our organization when she was in her 10th standard, who lost mother and father, and extremely bright child. And I was a mentor to her, and we supported her through college. I still continue to be mentor. At one point in time, she said, "Can I call you dad?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" So that it began the relationship, and it's a beautiful relationship. She's 22 years old and works for Fresh Works. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you have an eligible bachelor who has a daughter. Yeah. So that's a really beautiful thing to happen. I would like to take away my summary that possibly being single is not a virtue in its own way, or not an advantage in its own way. But I think being single and taking it, investing that entire energy in what is your life's purpose is probably part of a larger design, and you're part of that. That's the way I would read it. Thank you for sharing that. Now we'll go to questions. Please keep questions to questions. Don't go into long answers, because then Group Captain Vijay Kumar will get very upset with you. Okay. So, sir, right in the front, sir, your question, please. Only questions, please.
Only questions.
Yeah, it's on. Please go ahead.
Actually, when you taken the decision, I find you said your management background, MBA background, but you have taken an impulsive decision. And management, we're in MMA, Madras Management Association. It must be based on information, some projection from the past to the assessing your resources and what you want to be. But nothing of any sort. You have done that. But I don't think, let me be honest with you, I want to appreciate that. And also, very total transformation through art. That is a very expensive process. And have you made a transformation? Have you assessed the transformation? And how those people of your NalandaWay, they have become less violent. You are not projected in your conversation. That is, without art, with art, are they becoming less violent? How much improvement you have made? And what is your goal? What is the purpose? Nothing is clear. Sorry for that.
So much as can be only shared in a 1 hour conversation. But what you're saying is very true, but we're very, very process-centric. Every intervention that we do, we measure every result, every activity. We constantly looking for why we are doing, is it effective, it is efficient. We're looking at percentage growth in behavior. We're looking at before they came into the program, what was their baseline with respect to confidence, cognition, all of these various parameters. We have very scientific tools to measure that, and we're continuously measuring that year on year. So I would be happy to share, maybe we can take that offline. I don't want to bore you with data. And talking about violence, it's if a child is more self-confident, there are less chances that he would be violent or be abrasive with another person. So it needs to go back to much more deeper indicators in terms of looking at why certain things happened and how can we improve that. So we can have that conversation after. Today, I understand with respect to looking at validation before you proceed to a larger implementation. Today, I'm sure there was a lot of impulsivity in the early on. Today, when we look at new initiatives, we do a lot of pilot. We measure the results. We understand, go back to the drawing board. We test them. We use external evaluators to validate our results. So it is using a lot of research and implementation at a small level before we take it to a larger population.
I'll come to your question, sir. Just one point I want to add from personal experience. The word is not impulsive. The word is conviction. Sometimes in life, data will not be available for you to showcase your conviction. Your conviction comes from an inner sense. And sometimes when you heed that inner voice, you cannot go wrong. In fact, with the inner voice, you can never go wrong. Okay? But that's a personal point of view. Let's go to the gentleman at the back, then we'll come here to the gentleman here. Yes, sir. Sir, I'll come to you.
Good evening, sir. And you, as you said, there were 4 incidents in your life, or you can say 4 dots in your life. That is, one is Gotra incident, then the boy entering into your office, and you are quitting your job, and you have started the Nalanda wave. The 4 incidents have made you what you are now. But that boy who entered in your office was not affected by Godra incident, is it not? Yep. So when he was not affected by the Gotra incident, how can you link that Gotra incident to your life? That is isolated. Gotra incident is isolated one. So can you please throw some light on this? How you link Gotra incident in this line?
I think you touched upon it, but you can very briefly cover it again.
See, violence is not isolated in Gujarat, right? Violence happens across the world. My provocation, my impulse, because of my personal experience in a certain time, and me meeting Agarbatti boy, the issue is how can we create conversations with people who are opposite, and when I know somebody better, there are less chances that I will be cruel to him. So that's the connection.
Right. Let's go to the gentleman here. Yes, sir.
See, somewhat similar to the question asked by the other person. See, you met that Agarbatti boy, you saw a great perseverance and entrepreneurship in him, and then you took a decision. Then you started with dealing with people who don't want to go to school, who don't do perseverance, the idling boys on the road. You took up as your, your target audience or whatever. See, the question I'm trying to ask is, see, when you saw that Agarbatti boy, you probably found a good segment of society where you can start your new endeavors. Probably he helped you identify that segment. Because from whatever you have sent, because I have one more small information I want. What is the kind of turnover or budget of your NalandaWay this year, next year?
So, I think it's a very, very valid observation. I think I didn't even think that way. So I think possibly he gave in a segment for me to work on. I think possibly it is. I think I did mention my turnover will be short of 5 crores this year.
That's the budget for projects. Yes, sir. No, his point is that both are instances of violence, Godhra and Nalanda. So does NalandaWay's program invite children to leave their religious beliefs behind and embrace, a more secular outlook? I think art does that in a way. So you want to just answer?
It does. I mean, today we have Chennai Children's Choir. We have kids who are Muslims, kids who are Christians, kids who are Hindus. Each of them singing a Meera Bhajan to a hymn from the Bible to all of that. So that's the hope. I mean, that's only a hope. I don't think anybody has a magic pill to that.
Okay, last question for the evening before I do a wrap. Yes, can we quickly pass the mic here at the back, not to Vardarajan, at the back. Last row, please. No, not that I don't want Vardarajan to ask a question, but I saw the gentleman's hand go up, and that's the last question for the day. We'd like to stick to time. Thank you.
So you spoke a lot about your work with children. Now, can you throw some light on the teachers per se, because they could be important in the long run, okay, and they could take some load out of you, okay. How important in your experience were the work with the teachers in changing their mindsets? You did speak something about, how difficult it was for the children when you surveyed, they found that the teachers were more adamant, etc.
Feared,
okay,
yeah.
So we now work with over 1,000 teachers, close to 1,200 teachers on a regular basis. So we need to work with their motivation, we need to work with their competency. What we realized, though, much to my surprise, very pleasant surprise, the initial understanding is always that a government teacher is not interested to work with children, is not interested to is not motivated enough. But actually, much to the contrary, they are extremely motivated to work with the disadvantaged sections of the society. What they lack is skills, what they lack is competency, and that is a good problem, because if it's an attitude, a lack of interest and indifference, that will be much more harder. So we work with them extensively on improving their competencies, improving how they can use tools and techniques to even like disciplining a classroom. How to expecting a child to sit in the same place in 6 hours is going to be a trouble. Now, but how do you help a teacher work with that group of children? Can we use theater games every 20 minutes so the kids is energized and is back into class? Now, these are small techniques that the teacher can use inside a classroom without using punishment or fear as a way for class management. So which means teachers are so important for us if we need to reach the child. And sometimes they can be bottlenecks in some teachers being indifferent to what they're doing. But we find them more often good. It is also very locational dependent. We've seen male teachers extensively in places like Haryana, very, very indifferent. We found teachers in South India much more giving, willing. I'm not making a stereotype here, but it is much more easier to work in South than in North. Some of these, but we're constantly at them. Yeah.
Great. Let me do a wrap now. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It was a good question. Sir, I cannot allow that point. You can take it offline with Sriram. Absolutely no problem with that. But a quick wrap. I'd like everyone to take away this point of view, if you like it. Godhra was a trigger in Sriram's life. the metaphor of violence manifested itself through Godra. The child, the Agarbatti boy, was a trigger. And somewhere the restless mind of Sriram married the two and conceived of a program through arts in the classroom and gave it a shape and structure called NalandaWay. Let us be clear that there is a lot of violence that is non-religious that's affecting our children. And it's happening in homes, it's happening in neighborhoods, it's happening through social media, it's happening in the public conscience. There is a lot of violence. And art in the classroom is healing that violent mind and drawing the children out. So it's not about the religious or communal violence that is being addressed alone. So let's not think that violence is all about burning homes and razing communities down to ashes. Here we are talking about taming the violent instinct of children, which can be something which can go unprotected. It would just let loose and burn our society in the future. So I think it's a small drop in a large ocean. 54,000 children, 1 million children in 13 years. We are nowhere to making a huge dent in the space that we are dealing with, right? But it's a beginning. And that brings me to what I take away from Sriram's life. I'm reminded of what Dr. Albert Schweitzer said, and it's a favorite quote for me, the physician philosopher. He said, "Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success." And he said that if you love what you're doing, then happiness and success will follow. In his case, he made that important choice in December 2004 to go after what he believed in, and he's loving it. And that's why his NalandaWay, the organization that he started, today has touched 1 million lives. And that's no small achievement in its own way, though it's still a small drop in a big ocean. Thank you. Thank you, Sriram, for being with us. Thank you. Our next edition of The Uncommon Leader will be on 15th of May, and we have another interesting social entrepreneur, Dr. P. Srinivasan of the Jeevan Group, who will join us. His is a very exciting journey. He gave up being a capitalist to set up a social enterprise, but then when he realized that he needed money for his social enterprise, he said, why not wear my capitalist hat again? So that's a very interesting story. Come back to us on 15th of May, and that will be at Vijay's beautiful MMA office. I'm saying Vijay's beautiful MMA office, but it is MMA's office where Vijay has welcomed all of us, right? Let me hand it back to Vijay for closing remarks and bringing this evening to a close. Thank you, Sriram. I think it was wonderful.
Thank you, AVIS. As usual, very inspiring evening, and I think you're all waiting for the hug. It's very inspiring to see. I think this hug formula, I'll do it for every event now. And one important takeaway for me is who's are watching, all the people, is we have a very, very eligible bachelor, and all that you have to do is go NalandaWay. Now, may I request AVIS to please present a memento on behalf of MMA?
Welcome, you also.
Come. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye. Get back home safely, and good night till we meet again. Bye-bye.